we had a little bit of unfair advantage because we've been in the industry for a long time, for many years. And it wasn't a big issue for us to get the first customer. The biggest issue was to convince them that this thing can fly. And you can think about like trying to convince people in a very conservative, old school industry when they just know that it should work this way because that's how our grandfathers did it.
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset, everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer. Be sure to head over to clicksandbricksacademy.com so you can access all the resources to start improving your sales today.
If you own a commercial building, Yuri is here to change your life on permitting processes moving forward. Actually, it's not just commercial buildings. He also helps residential people get their permits as well. How are you doing today, Yuri?
Doing wonderful. Thank you, sir.
Fantastic.
How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm super happy to have you on the show. I love the technology that you guys are working on. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what Constructo does?
Absolutely. So my name is Yuri Galip, and I'm a founder and CEO of Constructo. So what we do, in my understanding, we're fixing the biggest issue right now in the residential. And as you mentioned, we're about to get into commercial as well, construction, which is the plans and permits. And everyone who tried to get the permit for their remodel or construction or whatever project they want to do knows how bad it can be, how time-consuming, frustrating this process can be. And it is very old school. So they need to manage multiple vendors. They need to deal with the building department, planning department, jump through the thousands of hoops to get this permit. And unfortunately, right now, I think it's one of the biggest issue, sort of like reinforcing the housing crisis in this country. So by fixing the pre-construction, and in some cases, it can be up to 30% of the project budget and project time frame, I think we're doing our part in fixing the housing crisis as well.
Yes, absolutely. There's a ton of problems in the permitting process in general, right? So can you tell the audience a little bit about specifically what it is that you're just before we went on, you told us what the old process was and
right,
kind of how you're moving that process. And I've had to pull permits for a lot of commercial buildings and residential. Mm-hmm. Both processes are miserable in my mind and time consuming and clunky. And
that's right.
For me, my biggest problem has always been scope creep, right? The
right,
inspectors want to add more stuff that doesn't necessarily apply to the job that you're doing. And that's always a big problem for me. I don't know if that's the same in residential and if you're solving that problem or not.
Absolutely the same.
I've got some ideas of some of the problems that you're solving. So can you tell the audience a little bit more about that? Sure.
And if you don't mind, I'll start with a traditional process. So let's say you want to, and let's, for the simplicity's sake, stick to the residential level for now. Let's say you want to get the permit for your addition. So in order to do that, you have to start working with a local architect or drafter to get the set of architectural plans. You'll be discussing design, you'll spend some time with him, working on the floor plan, et cetera, et cetera. At the end of this process, you also need to hire another vendor, which is a structural engineer, to put together the structural drawings and calculations for your project. And in some states, you also need to do additional stuff like in California, Title 24, it's energy efficiency compliance calculations. And only after that, you can go ahead and submit it to the city. And that will start another round of wonderful time with the planning department and building department. And to make myself clear, I don't want to say that the permitting on itself is a bad process. I think it's a wonderful process. And that's because I had experience of doing construction, not only in the United States, but in Europe and in Russia. And I think it's a great protection for homeowners here in the United States, getting the permit, because you can think about it as getting the city on your side to protect you during the construction process. And they will be making sure that everything is up to code, it's structural sound, it's safe, and you just made a good investment. So I'm very far from idea to treat it, as a nuisance or, with this terrible government trying to pull the money out of our pocket and things of that sort.
Right. The permit itself is generally pretty cheap.
Right,
right? So
right.
the
It's not
government's
about
not
money.
the one
It's
getting the
usually about
cash in,
time, right?
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
they're making
yeah,
sure that you don't have. Why the local governments want to have permits is they want to make sure that they don't have derelict houses in their community that aren't
yeah,
sellable because they're not safe to live in,
exactly.
right?
Yeah, and that's a huge point. Yeah, obviously they also have a revenue from the permit fees, and when people doing unpermitted work, they're losing this revenue. But sort of like the damage to overall housing inventory in particular city is way bigger than missed revenue from the permit fees. But getting back to the regular process, old school process, you see it's a very fragmented, and you have to manage multiple vendors. And the problem is then that on this market, the majority of them, they're very small. It's either one-man shop or it's very small teams. There is no big companies who do it, at least on the residential market. So even though you can find wonderful drafter, wonderful person, human being, we all human beings, everything can happen. Yeah. And what are you going to do with your project if your drafter just quit in the middle of the process for some reason? You have to start everything from scratch and deal with another vendor. So that's the one problem. The second problem is how they charge. So because it's independent vendors, they can charge whatever they want and in whatever way they want. It can be hourly rate, it can be retainers and flat fee. So you have a big problem to predict your budget until you almost complete your pre-construction. And on top of that, after that, you need to deal with the building department and with the planning department. And
Right.
as you mentioned, it was a great point. They very often come up with additional requirements because any big alteration is sort of like a trigger to bring everything up to code. And let's say if you're touching more than 50% of the walls here in California, you will be subject to new construction requirements, like, make the whole house electric, chargers, solar panels, and blah, blah, blah. And not all of them, make sense for me, but it is what it is. We have to follow that. Right. So long story short, that's why this original process and the old school process created so much hassle. Yeah, and that's why it accounts for up to 30% in money, in time, and created huge delays. Right now, we're looking at 6 to 12 months in the big metro areas of delays because of this inefficient process. So when we start thinking how we can fix it, and I've been in the industry for 15 years. My team have a huge deal of experience as well. And before COVID, we start doing it in the same regular way, like a local building design studio. So when the COVID hit, we start thinking, okay, there should be a way how we can make it more effective. We cannot meet on site. We cannot, spend hours and hours in client's home measuring it. We need to do it quickly. And we have to move it online because we cannot have this in-person meetings anymore. And we're a little bit afraid would it work or not. But what we found that even though it's very old school industry, people are eager to have a new approach here. They like the idea to have it as a streamlined, turnkey online process from the very beginning when we just measure and discussing the design and all the way to the permitting through all these steps, including architectural design, structural, et cetera, et cetera.
So do you take the place of the general contractor on the permitting side?
No. So what we do in case if we act as a permitting agent, we have this optional service. So what that means that when the plans are done, we will get the legal right to represent our client in front of the city and submit all paperwork and manage all communications with the city. Because for big projects, it's almost guaranteed that you'll be seeing a couple of rounds of revisions and back and forth with the city. Sometimes, it can be very stupid. Like, majority of the comments what we're receiving is like very minor. Put this note here, remove this note and put it on another page. But I understand they have to work. They have to show their work and justify our tax money, what are we paying,
right.
to keep them there. But I appreciate it. And long story short, it is a process and we have to manage it. And that's what we do on the permitting side.
Absolutely. Anybody that's been through the process knows that it's always, I've never been through a permitting process or a construction process that was simple all the way through. There's always some extra red tape that you got to go through, some hurdles that you've got to jump. And in my experience, almost exclusively, I double my budget when I'm doing a construction project because I've got my building material and I've got my scope of work, but I know that there's always something that I don't know that's going to pop up and bite me. And if it doesn't, then I budget properly and I have extra cash. But if I didn't, and I've had jobs that cost, 3 times the expectation because somebody decided to rezone it in zoning before we opened. But
I hear you. Unforeseen and contingency, that's the name of the game in construction.
But business owners keep moving forward, right? We don't stop because something out of the ordinary happened to us. And that's what makes us different than other people. So, but you were Constructo, you started in what month in 2020?
July 2020. That's a date of our legal incorporation.
Right.
We start testing the different parts of this business before, like starting probably January, February, on the basis of the existing business. But July was the month when we decided, okay, that should be a big deal. We're going to incorporate and we're going to make it a nationwide provider eventually.
Fantastic. So you were, prior to that, you were a traditional design house,
absolutely,
permits,
yes.
all that stuff. But you then made the decision in the pandemic that this business isn't going to work anymore. I'm going to change gears. I'm going to start a brand new company. Did you close the old company or is it still in existence?
Yeah, it still exists, and it's sort of like was merged de facto. Because I was owner of the first company and the owner of the current company.
So you're using resources from both pools to really help this new kind of Internet 3.0 company.
Absolutely, and because
launched.
the way, and every time when you're discussing, the ideas of some sort of like a marketplace or big service, you always bump into the catch-22. Like, what will be the first, like your consumer or the vendor? So, and we knew that can be a problem if we start doing it from scratch. So what we did on the very beginning, we started doing everything in-house. But we knew for sure that it's very temporary and there is no way we can scale it unless we figure out the way how we can start outsource it and create the internal marketplaces. So we started with the measurements, and we do it differently. Instead of the tape measure, laser, and spending 4 hours with the helpers in the client's house, and after that bothering them with the calls, oh, Mr. Client, sorry, I missed to measure the window, I need to get back, all this stupid stuff.
Yes.
We just scan it. So we tested all available on the market stuff,
scanners.
like 3D scanners, cameras, whatever. So you name it, we tested it, and we end up using Metroport. And I think that was the wonderful decision. It's an amazing company, and we have a very close relations right now, and we really appreciate that they're helping us, and they was a very instrumental and a big part of our success. But long story short, what we do, we scan the entire house and create digital twin of it. First of all, we get very accurate as-built measurements. Right. Second, we completely eliminate the need to get back on site to remeasure. And the third, it's similar for me to bring the entire team in client's house and show them, like, okay, Mr. Engineer, here's your trusses. Right. Mr. Title 24 guy, here's the insulation. And Mr. Architectural Drafter, here's your measurements. So that was a big game changer for us. But we quickly realized that, okay, we can do it ourselves. I have a technician. I even did it myself. I always try to do myself first before I hire someone to do it. I love it. I really love it. I think that's the key, So,
I still love being in the trenches, right?
Right. Yeah. I think that's so important. You need to feel it. You need to understand it.
As a tech guy at heart, it's really hard to not want to play with this technology, right?
I know.
It just is.
I know. Yeah.
But I think, and this is an important tip for all tech entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
Play with the tech so you understand it, but don't be a hurdle or a roadblock or a bottleneck for your team. Embrace your team. Let them figure this stuff out. You can still play with your toys. It's fine, but don't get in the way of your team. Because I'm getting up there in age, and I don't, I'm not as sharp with the tech, this new tech, as some of these kids are. And I think it's important to make sure that they are learning these new skills and embracing them and moving the company forward, not just the founders who love playing with it. I found myself being a roadblock for my team at times because I wanted to play with the tech.
That's such a great point, and I hear you, because that was my problem as well. On a certain point, I found myself in a situation when I run all plans for me, because I love doing design. I mean, architectural design. I'm not very good in interior design, and this nitty-gritty stuff, but architectural design that's my favorite. And I end up having all plans on my table, virtually, obviously, and created a huge gem in our production line. And that was the moment when I like, okay, you cannot do it anymore. You have to start delegating. You have to trust your team more. And it wasn't the issue of the trust or their professional capacities and expertise. It was my personal issue. So that was a big work what I did on myself. And
how did
now
you diagnose that in yourself? How did you see that in yourself?
I let it run until it turns to a really ugly thing, you know, because
yeah, it's a bummer that you have to do that.
Right. I recall this day, you know, it was because we're having a production meeting every day at 10 a.m. That's like a mandatory. I like to be involved with it. At least, even if we discuss it, you know, just in a couple of words, I still want to hear it.
Right.
So on the one day, the entire team, project managers, you know, my head of production, they started the meeting with a phrase, "Hey, we need to get you out of our production." It was a little bit rude, but like, what the heck you mean? How you can get me out of production of my own company? It's like, and they start showing me numbers. Okay, you sat on this project for 5 days because you said that you want to review it. You don't need to review it. We already know what we need to do. And we did thousands of these projects. And that was a, you know, moment of truth for me. Like, okay, you need to start being a manager finally, you know, stop playing games, you know. That was a big point. And yeah, getting back to your question about our process, you know, when we start thinking how we're going to make it more effective and make it sort of like a COVID-proof, so to speak, and fully online, we understood that we have to redesign each and every step. Like I said, we did it with measurements. We did it later with S-builds, converting this measuring data to the CAD files. With communications with the clients, it was the biggest problem because, you know, people, they just expected to be in the old school way. Like when you meet on site or you meet in your office. So it was a learning curve, but eventually we end up having a very lengthy and effective kickoff meeting after we got the S-builds done with the clients. We use a mirror to show them the S-build plans, to collaborate there. And after that, we move it to the production. And we come up with the first iteration of conceptual design. Another great advantage of our service that we provide the design not only as a 2D, but as a 3D model. And, you know, for homeowners, it's way easier to understand it. And more than that, for our B2B clients, they love it, general contractors, because like last time, our wonderful client, we have a huge number of projects with him, he told me, hey, listen, you save me on average 5 hours of sitting with client and trying to explain him these plans. Instead of that, I just show him 3D model and that's done deal. So we can move forward. Yeah, it was a very important thing for me to hear. And after that, we move it to the structural and all this stuff and take care of the permitting.
Fantastic. So you issued some pretty big news in early January of 2022 that you were doing a seed round of funding. Can you tell the audience a little bit about that?
That's right.
And if you're looking for a fun project to invest in, do you have to be an accredited investor for your seed round?
No, it's
so it's open to all investors. The laws are different today than they used to be.
Right. That's
so
like
can you tell a little bit about about what this seed round's like, and if somebody was interested? We've got a lot of entrepreneurs that watch the show and business guys,
absolutely,
people and women. So you know, maybe there's somebody out there that's looking for a fun investment in a Web 3.0 kind of tech.
Absolutely. And you know, even though we start shaping from the very beginning as a startup, so like, you know, being a Delaware C Corp and things of that sort, that was my goal from the very beginning, to build a business and prove myself that it's a big deal. We can do it and we can scale it. That was the biggest issue. So the entire last year, we're working on resolving all these issues. And now we know for sure that it is a big deal because, you know, we're growing fast. Last year, we grew 695% with 38% months over months on average. And we know that it's scalable because we started from one city in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, and now we cover the all big metro areas in California. San Francisco Bay Area, Greater Sacramento, and the big area in Southern California from Santa Barbara down to the San Diego. So we know for sure that it is scalable. We're ready to scale it, and now it is the time, to get some more fuel for expansion. So that's why we decided to jump into this train and start raising. Now I feel more confident talking to potential investors, because now I know myself as a businessman. It was very important for me, to prove to myself that it's a real deal and it's a good investment. It can be a good investment.
Right.
And we raised our first round. We call it a seed round. Please feel free to get in touch with me.
And how would they reach out to you? If they
they can find me on Twitter or on LinkedIn, or they can email me. My email address is Yuri, YURI, @constructo.online.
All right, and we'll throw that in the comments below.
Thank you.
If you're looking to, reach out and for a fun investment, pretty low investment requirements to get started in this particular process. And I mean, you're literally on the ground floor, and I'm familiar with your partners and the technology that you're using, and it's best of breed technology, right? I think Matterport was even listed as one of Motley Fool's stocks to buy for Internet 3.0 this week. So,
I can only subscribe under this recommendation.
Yeah.
Yes, so, I'm not a sort of like a stock guy, but I know this company. We work very closely.
I have tested a lot of 3D modeling cameras, and Matterport. Right. I mean, even when you call some of the other vendors and you're talking to them and you say, "Hey, I currently have Matterports," and they're like, "Oh, our cameras are they're way more superior than our cameras." So, even their competition just openly admits that, Matterport is currently the best in the marketplace, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Right, and because they did a great thing, and I think it can be a wonderful case for management books and management studies. They turn this camera stuff into the ecosystem,
right?
And that's the most important thing what they did, and I kudos to them for what they're doing, and great company, great people, especially great people. Which is more important.
Probably, I don't know if this is a hard question to answer or not, but it's straight fire shot. You started a new company, you had 0 customers, new technology. How did you get your first customer?
Great question. So we had a little bit of unfair advantage because we've been in the industry for a long time, for many years. And it wasn't a big issue for us to get the first customer. The biggest issue was to convince them that this thing can fly. And you can think about like trying to convince people in a very conservative, old school industry when they just know that it should work this way, because that's how our grandfathers did it, things of that sort. And now you're telling them, hey, we can do it fully online, and they're like, oh, you need to meet me on site, and after that you need to bring your engineer or something. No, I don't need to do that. Or the same with the pricing, like, hey, how you can even price my project even without visiting the house or assessing it? I was like, why I need to visit your house and bother you with me being there if I can give you a price right away? And I know for sure that it will be fair price. It will cover my expenses, my profit, and still will be, not absolutely at the bottom of the market, but in the lower portion of the market. So
right,
it'll be
and
fair
probably
price.
Better quality, right? So you get to do it less
absolutely
expensive and a much higher quality. So, but you've said a couple of times that you don't have to go to the house. Are you sending the equipment there and having the consumer scan the home, or do you send it tech out to scan the house?
No. That's another great advantage of our partnership with Matterport, because as I mentioned, we start doing everything in-house because we want to test everything. But when we understood, okay, this is technology we're going to use, we now need to figure out how we're going to scale it. And we start working with the local vendors, but after that, Matterport reach out to us and tell us, hey guys, do you want to test our new service? It's called Capture on Demand. And technically it means that they build their internal marketplace of all vendors across the country, and eventually it will be across the entire planet. And it's very easy to place an order for us. Yes, we have a set of specific requirements and they know what they need to do. So it's not something you can just do easily. But at the end of the day, we have access to the network covering the entire country with a super high quality of those scans, and they deliver us in 24 to 48 hours. And that's what we tell our clients.
Okay. So you're using the Matterport network of camera technicians
right now? Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. And I'm very familiar with that because I'm one of them. Right?
Wonderful.
So,
yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's a beautiful model, and it's a way to scale your business very quickly.
Absolutely.
Because you're not putting all of your eggs in the Matterport basket. You're doing other services based on the CAD files that they're providing to you.
Exactly.
The BIM files and stuff like that. So fantastic. That is absolutely great news. And if somebody wanted to pull a permit and use your services, they're going to do some construction. How would they contact you to do that? Or do you have
That's super easy to do. That's another advantage of Constructo. We don't want to make it, hustle and a long process. You just go on constructo.online, you pick project, what you need to do. Right now we have a ADU additions and remodels, and you just answer on this few simple questions. That's how big it is, number of stores and location. That's it. After that, you get the price. If it works for your budget, you're more than welcome to jump on board. The next thing what you will see after start the project is scheduling tools, scheduling measurements. And that means that the entire team is already working on the project. Right now, we cover our service area is the entire state of California, but this year we're going to be in a couple of other states for sure.
Okay, so moving on, final question, and this is a doozy, and I think you might have some really great concepts here. How do you see the future of technology changing either your business specifically, or if you have a grander thing in mind, changing the world in the future?
Oh, I'm super excited about our future. Honestly, it sounds weird and maybe stupid, especially, COVID, political crises. I don't know. I don't give a crap about that, because I do believe in humanity, and I do believe in the power of our mind. And what I see is how fast we moving in our evolution, and the new technologies, they changing the way how we do almost everything. At the same time, I think it's very important to always keep in mind that the implementation of these technologies shouldn't be just for technology's sake. We always need to understand why we're doing it and what the benefits it will bring us. And then at the end of the day, we all need housing, we all need food, we all need, human interactions, things of that sort. Some of the technologies, they can improve it and make it better, like communications. I think metaverses can be a next big thing for sure. We'll see, but at least that's what I feel right now. Housing, we see a ton of innovations in the housing industry right now. 3D printing, I don't know, we'll see. There's a ton of limitations, but I clearly see the sort of like the place for this technology it shouldn't be replacing the entire industry, so to speak, but I already saw a couple of examples when they use a 3D printer to quickly print the basements, and after that they can just do the prefabricated panels and install there. And I was like, cut the time in half or even more. Robot technologies, I think, even more have more chances to be implemented in construction, because the huge problem in construction industry is a labor shortage, and that's obvious. It's a hard work.
Right.
And not everyone want to go this route, and I cannot blame them.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, you just go ahead and spend 12 hours doing framing on the 100 degrees.
Well, yeah, because you can just do the 3D model and bump that out to a CNC print or cutter, right? And then have it delivered.
Absolutely. I think offsite production is for sure will be gaining more and more momentum.
Yeah, the future is it's going to be a wild place. You can literally point a finger at any kind of, different venture and say, oh, this is how I think tech's going to really change that business in the future.
Right.
I think, experiences at brick and mortar businesses are going to be they're going to have to be really exciting and fun to get people out of their house, because there's so many things you can do inside your house now
Right.
that are fun and entertaining and engaging and
Mhm.
talking with people all over the world. So it's a lot
The
of
beauty
fun to
that,
think about the
you
future.
know,
I
it's still
really enjoy
like
it.
a ton of space for improvement in the this old school industries, you know.
Absolutely.
And that's the beauty of that, because you know the people for people like ourselves, is sort of like a entrepreneurial problem. We cannot sit on the one place. We cannot be a good employees. We need to create something. We definitely can find a ton of rooms for improvement, and that's what we found in the pre-construction. You know, as I was always a big adept of new technologies, I was so frustrated how bad this industry is, and I was like, it shouldn't be so bad. You know, we need to find a way to fix it.
Right. Absolutely. Well, thank you for your time, Yuri. I very much appreciate it. When we talked about figuring out that you're a bottleneck in your company, the tip that I have for the audience and for you also, there's a book called The Phoenix Project. It's a really great book, and it helped me a lot figuring out where my bottlenecks were in a lot of my companies. So I highly recommend The Phoenix Project. It's a fun read, and the audiobook is absolutely fantastic from Audible. So that's all I have. Would you have anything you'd like to leave the audience with, Yuri?
No, first of all, thank you very much for having me today. It was a great pleasure to talk to you. And, you know, always when I start talking about my company, it's pretty hard to stop me. But
I think we're going to do some work together in the future, Yuri. I'm super excited.
I would love to.
We're definitely very close to similar lanes. So,
right.
You know,
I
think what you're doing is
advice
great.
What I can give you, never give up. You know, that's you always find a way. You'll figure it out.
Thank you. I had a great time today.
You too.
That's it for today's show, folks. If you'd like to join my text line community, the number is 314-370-2871. You can ask me any question about business or technology, and I'll give you an absolutely free, unbiased opinion. Get to work.